Welcome, I'm Matt Mead, Chief Technology Officer for SPR, and today we're talking about topics related to cloud, and we'll be pulling in data from our technology industry survey. Today I have with me George Burns, a Senior Cloud Operations Engineer from SPR. Welcome, George.
Thanks, Matt. Nice to be with you.
So when we surveyed IT executives, we discovered something that I thought was pretty interesting. 85% of organizations would rate themselves as mature when it comes to the cloud. However, IT leaders were more likely to rate their cloud maturity as very mature at the highest level in our survey. So let's talk about cloud maturity. What metrics should an IT organization use to assess their cloud maturity level?
When I'm working with the client to determine their cloud maturity, I like to look at three different metrics. I like to look and see if they've established the experience that they're looking to deliver to their end user. I look to see if they've defined a data strategy for the data within their application, and I make sure that they're delivering their application and their content in a secure way. If you can meet those three metrics, to me, you're on the right path to cloud maturity.
So that's really interesting, George. I think we've seen this trend with our clients where there used to be a security team separate from a product team or a delivery team or a cloud team. And now the picture you're painting, and it's something that we do see, is that we're seeing more of a shared responsibility across the board. And is it also more of a cross-functional team that we're seeing building products?
If you look at modern software development teams right now, they are cross-functional. There's people on software teams like me. DevOps engineers are part of software teams now. So when we talk about whose responsibility it is to maintain security of the application, that's everybody's. We're all introducing components into the application. So we have to understand the resources that we're using. We have to know how to manage them. We have to know how to stand them up correctly. Otherwise, what we're doing, we're either missing the mark on security, we're delivering the wrong thing, maybe we're leaving ourselves vulnerable to something. If we don't think about holistically how we design applications from day one, we miss the mark. So the more people we can include on the process at a high level, I think is better. It's not just cloud anymore. There's not a cloud team. Everybody has to know how to use components of the cloud now. If you want a database, we don't call the database person to say, hey, could you stand me up this database? In 100 characters, I can give you a database. So if I could teach you how to give you a database, give yourself a database in 100 characters, you don't need to call me anymore to say, hey, can you give me a database? That's cool. That's power. That's for you. But you don't know how to secure a database if I've just told you, here's a database, just go do what you want with it. Someone has to close the gap. So if we're all going to put ourselves into the place where we can touch these top-level primitives and create all the resources that we want to within our application development cycle, we have to make sure that everyone fully understands the components that they're using and the security implications that come with them.
Makes a ton of sense. I agree. George, you talked about a bunch of components that are important within the conversation around maturity in the cloud. But what's some advice that you give to an organization that wants to become more mature in the cloud?
The number one piece of advice that I have for organizations is to decouple your monolithic applications. They do no good sitting in the cloud in these monolithic silos that they were built in. The cloud is built for precision. The cloud is built for us to consume exactly what we want at the moment that we want to. So we can be surgical. We don't need a carpet bomb. We can pick out exactly what we want to use. So if we realize the power of the tools that we're using, we can utilize them in the way that best fits our project. So we don't come in to an engagement with the solution.
So I think in some respects what I'm hearing is sometimes what we hear of in the industry, a lift and shift, where you might take an application that might be in a monolithic state, move it up to the cloud, still in that monolithic state, is not necessarily achieving the value that the cloud has to offer. It's sort of taking advantage, I think what I'm hearing, taking advantage of those cloud native capabilities is where you're gonna get sort of the bang for the buck, or where you're gonna maybe be able to have some sort of business differentiator.
Exactly. If we can take your monolithic silo, if we can take this giant application that runs 50% of your business, but the servers that it run on are at 100% utilization all the time. That says so many things. A, you've reached the capacity of what that hardware could do. You have this monolithic structure, it's ballooned, it's too big. You need to break it up into more consumable pieces. That's what the cloud enables us to do. We don't need to create applications that do everything. We need to create applications that do specific functions to provide the results that we're looking for the next step. So we don't need to feed something into an application and it know all 900 steps that we need it to complete from now to the end. Modern applications are asynchronous. We can write a message to a queue, do this. 6 months later, come back, decide that we need to do something else, take the same data, write a different message to a different queue. By leveraging cloud components, we gain access to not only the data and the applications that we want, easier, faster, better, in a more highly available, more fault-tolerant way, but we're also doing so in a way that is at the pinnacle of cost effectiveness, because we are not buying servers, we're not paying for power. We are paying for the compute that we're using, we're paying for the network space that we're using, or the network bandwidth that we're using. We're paying only for the things that we use. We're not paying for a data center, we're not paying. Everybody does not need to be in the business of owning a data center. Everybody should be in the business of focusing on their core product. So if your core product can be improved with technology, partner with someone that does that well.
So what cloud computing skills and proficiencies do you think are going to be most important in the next 12 months?
100% security should be considered from day one. As we move forward, security becomes more important, not less. So as we look, if we were to look back at what security looked like 10 years ago, it is very different from what it looks like now. And in 10 years, it's going to be exponentially different than it is now again. So security awareness is not a one-time thing. Security awareness is something ongoing. We always need to understand what the most recent threats are. We need to understand the best practices around creating our applications, creating our infrastructure, designing the solutions that we want to put forward. Security has to come first. As our networks mature, we talk about zero trust networks. We talk about networks that we build where we, by default, trust nothing and build that trust in. We talk about explicit trust versus implicit trust. We want to be able to explicitly say our security does this, as opposed to saying, I think if it's set up correctly, our security should inherit these rules from X. Those are very, very different answers to the same question. If you can say, I definitively distrust everything that enters my space until it proves to me it's worthy, that's security. And that's the direction that we're going. We are trusting less, but using more.
I have another question for you, George. What can lagging organizations do to catch up with their leading counterparts when it comes to cloud computing?
Stop sinking money into legacy resources. Putting money into something old is only going to keep that something old around forever, and that technologies of yesterday don't match the technologies of tomorrow. If you're still working on a COBOL mainframe and you're still putting money into that, that's your choice. That's not my choice. That's your choice. Invest in today's technologies. Don't throw good money after what's now bad. It wasn't bad money in the first place, but now you are investing in something that was built 20 years ago, 10 years ago, however long ago. How many cars have you had since then? How many houses have you had since then? We don't need to keep these applications around forever. They're cattle, not sheep. They need to get better.